Welcome back to the Gruber Companies. This is the Tesla Roadster podcast weekly. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
What we have behind us here is a rendering of, again, artificial intelligence of a Tesla Roadster. And I asked for a black, sinister-looking Tesla Roadster, and this is what it came up with. I don't know about the sinister looking. It's something I drive. It looks pretty cool.
It looks pretty cool. It's as AI does. I heard that AI is getting less accurate over time in some areas.
Really?
And there are, for example, math problems that it used to get, ChatGPT used to get right 98% of the time. It's getting right as little as 2% of the time now. This Roadster is a little bit less accurate than some of the other ones that we've seen it make in the past.
Well, it's contrary to what we expect from AI. We expect it to get smarter and faster and better, and it's actually declining. That's interesting.
I think one of the things that's happening and the AI is really struggling with is how to differentiate information from misinformation.
Could be. So the guardrails that they continue to add to it may be confusing it.
Yeah, I think so, maybe. But it's a beautiful car.
Mm-hmm. So again, in this Tesla Roadster podcast, if you don't have a Tesla Roadster, that's okay. We try to confine the question somewhat to that particular early Tesla vehicle, but we can entertain some questions in between. Looks like we don't have any yet coming in, but yeah, Tesla Roadsters are an interesting bunch. They were typically early adopters. They were the people that bet on Tesla when there was a slim chance that they would survive, and they tend to be a courageous lot. They're also very passionate about their cars. There is a new group of people that has been entering the Roadster community over the last couple of years, and that is the collector. These are people that oftentimes buy a car and they really don't intend to drive it. What they're looking at is an investment.
Right. And people forget nowadays when you have 25 different models of car that have anywhere from 220 to as much as 500 or 600 miles of range. The Tesla Roadster was a one-of-a-kind car, and it was out there to prove that electric vehicles could be viable. The best range on an electric vehicle before the Roadster was something along the lines of the Nissan Leaf with about 70 miles of range. And then the Roadster comes in with its 220 miles on its range charge and 180 miles standard charge. And that just kind of blew the industry away at the time.
Yeah, that's true. In 1997, when the T0 was released, that was a healthy 80 miles an hour using lead-acid batteries. They were Optima spiral-wound AGM-type batteries. Mm-hmm. But still, you couldn't go very far. It was probably an around-town commute car. And the other thing about the T0 in 1997 was there was no place to charge. You had to find either a 20-amp outlet somewhere, and then it was a slow charge. You certainly couldn't take trips with it. And if you did, you had to go to a KOA campground and get a 240-volt charge, which would speed things up a bit. But yeah, it wasn't, the charging stations weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. Looks like we've got our first comment or question from Brent Taylor with YouTube. He said, the coolant pump on my R80 Roadster has been running for several days. Is this normal? It depends on your temperature, Brent. If you could tell us where you are and what the ambient is, that would help a bit. The things that I would check is what's your coolant level? If the coolant level is low, then it's not quite able to cool as much as it should, and it's going to put a coolant pump call out continuously to your pump. The other is, what is the age of your pump, and do you have a 1.5 or a 2.0 Roadster? The 1.5 Roadsters have a really low-tech DC brush motor pump and only one. And as we all know, DC brush motors have a couple of failure points. One, the brushes wear out. They're like pencil erasers. Mm-hmm. Eventually, they disappear. The second is you have bearings in there, and those also eventually get worn, gummed up, and it affects your CFM, or your coolant flow. In the 2.0 Roadsters, you're going to have a couple of pumps, and these are magnetic impeller pumps that don't have bearings, basically. So you don't get the same kind of wear, and you don't get the brush wear. So I would be interested if you have a VIN 500 and under in the U.S. at least, type Roadster. And then there are a couple of fixes. We recommend that those 1.5 coolant pumps get replaced every 5 years just for good measure because they're going to fail. If you're having any service work done on it, that's a good time to change it because if you have to take it back in when it fails later, it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have more information. Brent says, I'm in Oklahoma, but the car stays indoors. The AC is about 80%.
So the battery stays at 80%, it looks like. He keeps it in a cooled environment with a pump on it anyway. Yeah, I think that VIN number is probably, the last four of the VIN number is going to be really helpful for figuring this out now.
Yep, let's see if we get more information on that one then. In the meantime,
it's coming right. He says it's number 613.
613, so it's a 2.0 Roadster. Okay, well, that takes the pump problem off the table. I would check your coolant level then, and yeah, start there. We've got a couple of items here that we could start with. We had a customer that contacted us, and he said he had just purchased a Roadster, actually. Right. And his concern was, is this a fiberglass or carbon fiber body? And we told him it was carbon fiber. And he said, do I need to be concerned about the carbon fiber panels coming loose or delaminating or, as he drives it? And actually, Mark, you want to chime in on this? You did a bit of research.
I'll chime in on this particular one. The customer had reached out to me and said, very excited about his new Roadster, but kind of concerned. Where he lives, he has some rough roads, a lot of potholes, and he's like, I don't want to crack my body panels just by driving over these rough roads. Is it okay? And so what I did is I consulted first with Pete, and then we realized pretty quickly that we've got really good anecdotal evidence based on the number of Roadsters we've seen come through our shop. And some of these Roadsters have been really through the ringer when it comes to the type of environments that they've been in. We've seen Roadsters, for example, we've seen one Roadster that the PEM has to get cleaned out and its annual service done much more than yearly, simply because the guy typically drives on rough dirt roads with a lot of potholes and stuff all the time. So I did some further looking, found out that carbon fiber, as far as body panels and as far as strength is concerned, is both lighter and stronger than fiberglass. And as a result, any place that you would be willing to take a car that has fiberglass panels, the carbon fiber panel will absolutely go in. And so that's kind of where I had left it with this particular customer, saying, "Hey, you had a small Mazda sports car. If you were willing to take your Mazda on this, your Roadster's going to be fine."
Yeah, a couple of examples that we have. VIN number 507, which is the world traveling Roadster that Rafael de Mestre is now taking around the world again, actually. We had that in the service center for about 3 months or so, and we went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and there were no indications of any kind of panel delamination or adhesive breakdown, and he was driving this on very unpredictable roads. I mean, we're talking about third-world countries that didn't have good infrastructure, Kazakhstan, Russia, Ukraine, and Southern Asia. So yeah, it has not been a problem that we have seen. What does, however, happen for customers that we have that live on dirt roads, or at least traverse at times on dirt roads, it tends to clog up their power electronic module more than the average commuter that drives on asphalt. And so you may have to have more than an annual done every year, because the downside of having a clogged PEM is that your transistors, your IGBTs, are running hotter than they should. There are heat sinks that they're coupled to, and the heat sinks on the opposite or outside of the PEM are actually in an air plenum, and there's two 12-volt DC brush motor fans again that are blowing air across these heat sinks, and they tend to clog up. And if you get too much dust, you end up overheating your PEM, which is not a good thing because you have a lot of electronics inside there. One of the worst ones that we actually had was we had done an annual, and it turns out here in Phoenix that this particular Roadster was still having a bit of overheating problems, not as severe as when it came in, but it continued having problems. So instead of doing the standard annual, which is removing the PEM, removing a couple of covers on the bottom of the PEM and then blowing it out continuously, we actually ended up taking the PEM apart and taking the heat sinks out, and that's when we found a bunch of bougainvillea leaves that had collected inside the fins in the heat sinks, neatly tucked into all the crevices, which were, then again, not allowing it to cool properly or to move air across the fins. So some detective work is usually done on our part these days. When we get a Roadster in, we ask about how it's stored, where it's parked. Do you have anything that you leave it in a carport, for example?
Yeah.
And what kind of roads are you driving it on? And that will determine whether we do a deep clean on the PEM or whether we do just a standard annual described by Tesla.
Well, and for people who aren't part of the desert, to let them know a little bit, bougainvillea is a specific type of hot weather plant. It's beautiful. It has leaves that are very, very lightweight. It constantly flowers throughout the year, sheds leaves throughout the year. Those flowers or the colored leaves, they're about the size of a quarter, and they're so light. Just a whiff of a breeze can cause them to blow up. And so those are the kinds of things that they're known in landscaping as a really messy plant. So somebody who had a Roadster that was parked outside with bougainvilleas nearby, every time that PEM is sucking up,
we got a picture.
There we go.
It's beautiful, but yeah, you're right. You see the landscapers with their blowers, and those are the leaves that are just floating in air.
Yes.
Those landscapers love to come and start here in Phoenix because it's so hot during the day. They come to my apartment at 6 a.m.
Yeah,
and they turn those blowers on.
Right.
I'm surprised they don't come earlier, actually.
And they wake you up. They probably need daylight. Maybe that's what it is.
It probably is.
Work, yeah.
On YouTube, That Guy 9 has another great question for us. He asks, is it recommended to have your garage air conditioned for EVs?
I would imagine that it improves the lifespan slightly. But we find that these EVs have been designed, other than where we are here in Phoenix and the Gobi Desert, at least while you're driving, to anticipate temperature extremes. And we have one Roadster, for example, up in Las Vegas, VIN number 13, by the way, very low mileage Roadster. And the temperatures in Vegas are comparable to Phoenix. It'll get 110, 115. And without an air-conditioned type garage, you're going to end up with 120 to 130 inside your garage, especially when you're charging and you have it closed.
Right.
So I happen to have the same thing at my house. I have VIN number 5, which is one of the very early Roadsters. And they tend to be more prone to overheating or temperature sensitive. Let's put it that way. What I've done over the last couple of years is I've taken some of our critical power fans, squirreled fan type, and I pop it on top of the battery in between the PEM and battery, and I move air through there 24/7 during the summer. And my car has been charging reliably every time it goes for a charge call.
I could see why that would be the case too, because even in the middle of summer, the garages don't tend to get more than about 125. That delta between the 125 degrees, which is really hot, and about 145 is where the PEM goes into power limiting mode and it stops charging. That's a small delta, but if you keep that air moving through, you're not going to raise the temperature very much. I happen to have an air-conditioned garage. I do a lot of hobby work in my garage, and so and we have electric vehicles, although not a Roadster. It's really a nice to have. I'm going to call it that, but I would not say that it's a have to have. I typically leave my Model S parked outside. We have a Volvo that's a little smaller that will park inside, and it doesn't really matter. Both cars behave just fine.
If that was the case, these EV manufacturers would have a reputation problem because people are always looking for excuses to not adopt an EV. Well, it doesn't last in hot weather, so I'm going to stay with my ice rolling coal pickup truck like Aaron over.
Yeah, exactly.
I mentioned that.
Well, there's that new video from Tesla too, where they're testing out in Saudi Arabia or something, right?
Yeah. In fact, someone mentioned, I think in the last podcast, that some Cybertrucks came back from New Zealand, and they must have been doing cold weather testing this time of year there.
Sure.
And someone was saying that southern New Zealand is pretty frigid.
Yeah, southern New Zealand can be is pretty well known for the amount of snow it can accumulate and amount of cold that it has.
Right. So I have a picture that we can pop up here, Jesse. It is, find it here. Don't have it. I do my best to prepare for these podcasts, and I'm always surprised when I'm in the podcast and suddenly realize, oh, I thought I popped that in there. Well, let me then paraphrase. About a month or so ago, there was a Tesla Roadster that was out on, well, I do have it. Sorry. All right. VIN 295, Jesse. I put up the for sale Roadster picture. So the whole point of where I'm going with this portion of the Roadster discussion is, if you're going to sell your Roadster, make sure you pick the right venue.
Yeah.
Not all auction houses do a good job of selling your Roadster because a lot of them don't know what this thing is. It wasn't until recently that Bring a Trailer began to recognize that you need CAC values. And oftentimes we'll post our newsletter that shows the sellers how to find their CAC value.
Mm-hmm.
This particular one happened to be posted out on eBay. Now, eBay used to be a popular place to sell Roadsters because there was nothing else. And then about 3 years or so, about 3 years ago, we came along with a free Tesla Roadster matchmaking site. Now, I have to emphasize that word free. You can go to an auction house, and you'll spend $100 to list it, and then your seller will get hammered with a 5% of sale price charge at the end of it. And they have upgrades that you can do as well, which take you over $100.
Oh, yes.
Ours is completely free, guys. And we've grown to such an extent that our penetration into the collector market is as good or even better than some of these auctions. Currently, I checked this morning because we just did another release of a Roadster for sale in Switzerland. We have 414 pre-qualified Roadster buyers waiting and looking for Roadsters to purchase. So this was listed on eBay. It was listed for $84,500, and I thought, well, that's low, but it was a brick Roadster. I thought, well, for a brick Roadster, that's actually a little bit high because about $70,000 is where a brick Roadster should sell for. But then I looked at, and you'll see the picture there. Take a look at the mileage on this Roadster.
Yeah, 1488 is going to put this Roadster in rare company as a collector's car.
Exactly. Because if you look on some of the auctions and even our auction, the low mileage cars are selling for close to 200 and sometimes beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a brick Roadster means you need a $30,000 battery pack replacement. They are available. Tesla has them. So if you do some simple math, you'll find that an $84,000 Roadster that was listed out on eBay actually becomes, with a $30,000 replacement, about $114,000 or so, right?
Right.
So, but that's for a standard Roadster without any pedigree. And, this is not a signature 100 car, but it does have incredibly low mileage, which makes it collectible. So I contacted the seller and I said, look, your price, although higher than most, brick Roadsters, is definitely low. And the reason being is your mileage. So I showed him what some of these low mileage Roadsters are selling for. You can go to our Roadster matchmaking site and you'll see it there as well. You can go to Bring a Trailer and you can see what they're selling for. So anyway, the eBay auction expired. He listed it with us. Within a week, I'm happy to report that he sold it for over $100,000. Now, the asking was $119,000, and the seller asked me to not disclose the actual price, but it was definitely much higher than $84,500.
Well, and again, on eBay, he ended up pulling it off after an unsuccessful sale on eBay because the bids that came in were nowhere near $84,500.
Yeah.
Didn't even meet the reserve that he had set.
It's the wrong venue, guys. eBay used to be good for selling roadsters. Nowadays, sell some parts. But if you're going to sell a roadster, come see us. And our website, grubermotors.com, there's a heading there, Roadsters for Sale. There's a button there that shows you how to submit your car. And, from there, the other nice part about our program is there's no expiration date.
Right.
So if you want to take your time and you want to make sure you get the right buyer, there's no pressure, and they stay out there until sold. The other nice part about working with our Roadster matchmaking site is our job is a dating service. We step out of the way. We acquaint or introduce the buyer and the seller, and then you guys take over. You do your price negotiations, you work your best deal, you answer questions, and any technical questions that you can't answer, come back to us. So you get free tech support. You're not going to get that from Bring a Trailer or from Sotheby's or from Barrett Jackson. They have no clue what they're selling, how to charge this thing, what to do after you buy it. So a lot of advantages by using our free service.
Well, and even on top of that, if you need us to help get involved with the finance transaction and process, we're willing to do that as well. We will escrow the funds between the buyer and the seller so that the title and funds transfer come through us. That's not at all. Again, it's a free service that we provide. Recently, a Roadster that sold, we even went so far as to use the Gruber Motors dealer license to purchase the car on behalf of the seller so that they wouldn't be charged the sales tax. And then we were able to turn around and be the selling agent to sell the car to the buyer. Since the buyer wasn't in Arizona, they filled out the proper forms so that they didn't have to pay sales tax on the purchase as well. It saved those parties about $9,000 on the transaction. Right. And while it is some extra time for us, that's part of what we want to do. We simply want to help facilitate the transactions.
So to put something else on record, the cynics often come in and say, well, what's in it? Why are you doing this? What's the catch, right? Well, there is none. We feel an obligation to the Tesla Roadster community ever since day one when we got into this business. And that's why we're providing all these services for free. Mm-hmm. Including transport selection. We subscribe to Central Dispatch, for example, and if you want some help getting a transporter, we'll simply tell you who's bidding on it and then let you take over. We're not marking it up. We're not marking it down. We're not doing anything. And then, like Mark says, if you want free escrow services, that's something else that we make available if you want to avail yourself of that. So it's one of the few things in life that is truly free. And again, we offer it to the Roadster community or anybody that wants to sell or even buy a Roadster. Now, if you want to buy one, you can use that same section on our website to sign up for getting on the pre-qualified buyer list. And the advantage to being on that list is, like this morning, we had a Roadster in Switzerland that just became available for sale. Our commitment to the pre-qualified buyers is that we will, for 24 hours, hold off advertising on social media to give the pre-qualified buyers a chance to purchase the car. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm often amazed how many of these cars sell before we even advertise in that pre-qualified buyer list. That's where usually the bargains get snapped up and the pedigreed Roadsters or the ones that have something unique or that are priced extremely well.
Yeah, the ones that really need to move. And I'll give full disclosure. There are some times that the buyers like to get services from us after the sale has concluded, mm-hmm. which we're absolutely glad to provide. There are also some times where the buyer doesn't want anything else to do with us other than getting our help to facilitate it, and we're completely fine with that as well.
And we have Roadsters that come here for service. In fact, there's one right now that is going to go up for sale soon. And after having it serviced, they decide, well, I'd rather sell it rather than bring it back home.
Right.
So that makes it really convenient because the Roadster's here. And of course, we have a social media team with professional photographers, and we can do your photography session, again, for free.
Yeah.
I have to keep using that word, right? But Anyway, so if you're interested or curious, go to our website. All of it's there. You can certainly sign up, and if you have a Roadster for sale, we'd be more than happy to list it for you.
By all means. In fact, we have on YouTube, Dean Richard has just commented on us. He says, I'm pleasantly surprised to see my new car, Roadster 295, make your podcast. That's correct. That is 295 that we were just talking about.
And Dean, you're going to be very happy with that car. We're going to be putting that into queue to get a Tesla Roadster battery to get that brick Roadster back up and running. And you're going to have a very low mileage collectible car going forward.
You know, you just make another good point there. We've got a really good working partnership with the Tempe, Arizona Tesla Service Center.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I wonder if there are any service centers in the nation that put in as many batteries and Roadsters as Tempe does.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that they probably break the record.
I think they probably do, but that also means that they're used to doing it. We have a good working relationship with them, and we just do everything we can to streamline the process for the customers.
Totally.
To be announced is on YouTube as well today. He says, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right. Speaking of Roadsters and auctions, there was one that just sold. It's VIN number 295. It's a Roadster that's been at our shop about 3 years ago or so. And it was listed on Bring a Trailer. It was listed as an R80 pack, which means that it has the upgraded 3.0 pack.
Now, this is not 295, because 295 was the blue one from eBay that we were just talking about.
Yep, 209.
So this one's 209, okay.
209. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up there. So 209 is a black Roadster, R80 pack, 3.0. It's a 2017 issue 3.0 upgrade battery pack. And for those of you that have been watching our channel and our activities, we've done a lot of work on the problems associated with the first release of the 3.0 battery packs, the 2016 release, 2017, 2018. These are battery packs that are going losing power, basically, and the technical jargon there's an impedance problem in those cells. And they are the first battery packs, actually, that are beginning now to manifest end-of-life issues, which we think is the same problem that's going to occur with the legacy packs that were released 15 years ago, but are still going strong.
Right.
So this particular Roadster sold for only $66,000, and that's probably the lowest I've seen in 3 years or more. And again, if you add the fact that this is going to require a $30,000 battery pack replacement, you're up in the $96,000 to $100,000 range for this Roadster. So anyway, there was a lot of discussion on this auction. What's the condition of the battery? Is it going to continue to decline? The bottom line is, and if you're interested, we have a video out there on our YouTube channel that documents the technical issues surrounding these early first-generation 3.0 packs, what's going on inside the pack, what empirical data is beginning to indicate with other packs that were installed and that were replaced around that time, and the condition of those Roadsters is a continuing decline, and it is not anywhere near the normal decline that you would see with a normal Roadster, which is a couple miles a year or so.
Right.
Or a resistive cell Roadster where you're getting rapid decline. This is a loss of power. Oftentimes the CAC value doesn't tell you that there is an impedance problem in that pack, and it is not indicative of the charge level. In fact, the charge level on some of these Roadsters with loss of power looks perfectly normal. The problem is a loss of power in the individual cells, and it's not just isolated to a few cells. It is all the cells because all of them were replaced at the same time.
Right, and the loss of power manifests itself not so much when the car is sitting stationary. It's when you mash on that accelerator pedal and you actually ask for the pack to give you power. It simply doesn't have the power to give.
Mm-hmm. One other concern that was voiced with this particular sale is that the insurance companies watch Roadster sales very carefully. Well, if they're watching Bring a Trailer with this particular sale and they're setting comp value based on this Roadster, then yes, you're going to have a problem. But I think that this can be explained in that people recognize that this was a flawed Roadster and that it had one of the early 3.0 battery packs, and that the net result of this was going to be eventually a decline to the point where the car can't even be driven up hills. We have insurance companies that also contact us for valuation questions. Excuse me. And all they have to do is look at our Roadster matchmaking site. There are 60 or more sold Roadsters out there with the prices attached. And they are definitely higher than most of the Bring a Trailer pricing that we've seen.
Yes, and while I know that the prices that we list on our matchmaking site are the asking prices and not necessarily the selling prices, we also know that in many cases the sales price ends up being either at or very close to the asking price. In some cases, we've seen Roadsters that end up selling for more than their asking price as well. So if you take that average that's on our site, I think you end up with a number that's not too far off of reality.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right. Let me see if I can find a image here. If you have something else that you want to cover before I get into that other Roadster.
Yeah, there's one thing that I know that there's a new car coming out by Fisker. And they call it the Fisker Ronin. It's been making waves now for about 3 weeks or so. Fisker is a EV startup company. Henrik Fisker tried to put together a car company, went bankrupt, then came out of bankruptcy, refounded his company they called Fisker Motors. They actually released 4 different models of cars. And one of those cars is the Fisker Ronin, which is a sports car very similar to a Tesla Roadster. Unlike the Tesla Roadster, though, this is going to be more of a grand touring type of sports car where it has 4 doors, seating for 5, and a longer range, somewhere close to 600 miles of range. Now, at the same time, they did fall into the what I would like to call supercar category, where they're announcing that it's going to have acceleration 0 to 60 miles an hour somewhere around 2 seconds. This is a to-be coming car. The overall impression on the Fisker Ronin, though, is more along the lines of, well, this is all good, but Fisker has their SUV called the Ocean. They're losing money on that as they sell these cars. Not sure if they're going to be able to be taken very seriously unless they can figure out how to make a profit with the cars that they're selling right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so we also have a Facebook question from Michael Fell, where he says, maybe don't buy secondhand and just lease the Roadsters.
That's interesting.
What would you think of that? If my initial impression on that is more along the lines of you don't have dealerships to finance these leases.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head is going. How has this been orchestrated, and do we know anybody that is leasing a Roadster currently? Off the top of my head, I do not.
No, off the top of my head, I don't either. And the Roadster community, by and large, is made up of people who are not financing the cars that they buy.
Right.
They're typically, when they go to buy a car, they're simply buying that car in total with cash. And if they do any financing at all, it's more along the lines of dipping into some sort of an extra capital account that they don't want to pull the money out of the account. They would rather keep their money parked in, say, a stock brokerage account and take more of a cash loan from themselves for it than anything else. Part of the reason for this, of course, is that the Roadster pretty much stopped losing value clear back in 2020. Mm-hmm. It's been up and down some since, but the prices that we were used to getting Roadsters for back in 2019 and 2020 If only we could get Roadsters for those costs again.
Those days are gone. Yeah, it was during the time when there was uncertainty about a replacement battery. Jesse, can you bring up some images out of a folder called Signature Green, VIN 18? And I got to tell you, we we receive a lot of really nice Roadsters. I mean, pristine, well cared for, paint protection, ceramic coated. They just shine and gleam often. This particular one came in, and it will eventually be for sale, by the way. It will get some deferred maintenance issues resolved, and it's a fully functioning car, but it's a very unusual color. There we go. So this is Tesla Roadster VIN number 18. It is a Signature 100 car, and the color is just stunning compared to everything else that we've seen. This morning, Victor just came back from vacation, our service manager, and I get a text from him a couple hours later, and he goes, "Oh my God!" And I thought, what did he see? What's he impressed with? Yeah, and he sends me a picture of this car. The color on this, and we've got another picture if you can throw it up, Jesse. This one is outside that folder. It's paint codes. The paint codes on the Tesla Roadster, we have a newsletter that that highlights all of the colors available at the time, and these are the production colors. And I could not find this color on that chart. The closest that I was able to see was a Roadster that we did valuation on that went from California to Montreal. It was the only Roadster that had custom wood installed inside it by Franz von Holzhausen's team. And it had a similar dark kind of green, but it seemed a little lighter than this. And they call that a custom emerald green. Well, this green that we have on this VIN number 290, or VIN number 18, there we go. Maybe it's a signature green. Those of you that know Tom Greiner, by the way, Tom is a wonderful Roadster historian. And if you have any questions about Roadsters, there are a couple of guys that you can go to. There's a guy in Texas, Thomas West, and of course, Tom Greiner as well. I emailed him this morning because there were a couple questions I had. What's the story on this custom color that doesn't even appear on the chart? And why does this Roadster not have a carbon fiber plaque between the seats? And it wasn't one of those things where they removed it. It looks like there was never one installed in this car. So anyway, the mystery about VIN number 18 will continue to evolve, and we'll keep you updated as to what kind of improvements we have made and to get this thing ready for sale.
I don't know that I would call that a teal blue necessarily, because it's awfully dark for a teal color. But I'm seeing the color of this Roadster on the picture the first time ever right here in this podcast. Mm-hmm. And it's just beyond stunning. I'm taken with it. I absolutely need to go walk over to the shop and take a close look at the color to kind of really figure out what color this is. But it is absolutely gorgeous. See, from that view, that looks like almost a forest green.
Yeah. And, there's no PPF on here. It is the quality of the paint that you're seeing here. No swirl marks. Whoever owned this car took extraordinary care of it and definitely had it professionally detailed from time to time.
That is absolutely amazing.
The other car that we had that was a similar color, by the way, was VIN number 1262. And it was presented as a one-of Roadster, commissioned by the owner with very unique upgrades. And they were so special that, again, Franz von Holzhausen personally was involved, along with his team, to perform some of these upgrades. What they ended up doing was, the criteria was to recreate an exterior in a custom emerald green with no carbon fiber. And it was a recreation of the old English MG and Triumphs, which this owner's father collected, and he was trying to revive these 60s cars in a Tesla Roadster. There's always a cool story that goes along with Roadsters. The second criteria was that the interior should have burl wood accents, clearly deviating from the common plastic, leather, and carbon fiber trim pieces. And if you're interested in getting more information about this particular emerald green one of car, on our website under gallery, it'll pop up for you and it will say only factory wood interior. And you'll see pictures of Franz and some of the work that they did on the inside of this car.
Boy, it seems like every one of these cars has such a fascinating story. I'm really looking forward to hearing the story behind this VIN 18 car as well.
Yep, they're not Fords and Chevys, that's for sure.
That's for sure. On YouTube, Jesper Tomo, and I hope it's Jesper and not Jesper. Hi from Milan. He says, I'm from Sweden, but in Italy for a couple of weeks. Sounds like he's taking advantage of that European holiday about this time of year that many people take.
Thank you for joining us. Yes. Yeah, one of our customers just emailed me this morning, and he's on the French Riviera this morning. But you're right, Europe tends to shut down in the month of August. A lot of vacations. Businesses actually shut down as well. It's kind of like Chinese New Year, you know?
Yeah, it is. It very much is. I remember we were talking about getting those shocks, and if we were going to be able to get them in time, because if we didn't get them by the 1st of August, we weren't going to get them until the middle of September.
True. And we're grateful, by the way, in the United States that all of our employees here take their vacations at different times so we can continue to operate and continue to keep the machine running.
Yes, definitely. Instagram, Jose Arriagada 549 says, hi, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So one other thing I wanted to pop up here for you guys is, and it's a picture as well, Jesse, if you can bring up yellow hardtop. For those of you that have Tesla parts, Tesla Roadster parts, and you would like to get them sold, there is a Facebook site called Tesla Roadster Owners Group. And the owners is all capital because this is a site that is typically only for people that own the car or have the car. Well, this is a sale item from Ivan Lowe, and he's in Hong Kong. And he said, would anyone be interested in my hardtop? So for those of you looking for a hardtop and you're in Asia, this is going to be a much easier purchase than trying to buy from the United States and going through customs and having it shipped and, you know, all of that. And of course, you can have these painted to whatever color you want. So there is a hardtop available. The rest of his ad says, Tesla took my Roadster forever, and I am left with a top. Feel free to message me.
I'd be interested first and find out what that meant. Tesla took it forever. I wonder if he maybe sold it back to Tesla or something like that. Is it not true, Pete, that if you wanted to change that over to be a carbon fiber hardtop, that is a carbon fiber top that has simply been painted, and you would be able to take the paint off and then refinish it with a clear finish? You
know, one would think that, but legend has it that all Tesla Roadster hardtops started off with visible carbon fiber.
Mm-hmm.
It was the rejects that ended up getting painted.
Ah, okay.
Apparently, carbon fiber is hard to get even and straight, so the ones that did not make the grade eventually ended up being colored. And, you know, these days, occasionally you'll see a visible carbon fiber hardtop sold, and they are going for about $6,000. They're not cheap.
Yeah, not at all.
So let's see what else we have here. Mouse is stuck. If we can bring up another picture, Jesse, it is VIN 507. And this is the World Traveling Roadster. And a few weeks back, Rafael Demestri, who's over on the right there, took his Roadster to Tony Williams' shop in SoCal. And Kyle Connor met him there and did a brief interview with him. Kyle Connor, if you're not familiar with him, is a YouTube influencer, and he's one of the global experts on charging methods. Somebody else pointed that out on a podcast. Kyle has been here 2 or 3 times doing videos at our shop, and I think we're trying to get him back on our podcast here most recently. But Kyle is very knowledgeable. He eats, lives, and breathes EV and has definitely become one of the charging experts on the planet. But He was talking to Raphael about his adventures. And if you're interested in seeing the video, it's on Kyle Connor's YouTube site, which is Out of Spec Motoring. And as it says in this article here, he is an EV enthusiast and a world traveler himself. Kyle does travel around the world. Not the world, but the United States mostly. No, wait a minute, the world.
He's a world traveler, yeah.
Yeah, remember, guys, we saw him in Norway trying to use the Neo battery swapping station in the middle of winter.
That's right.
So I guess we call him a world traveler, too. And, Kyle, that's one of the things we want to cover with you, your thoughts on battery swapping and what kind of places that you've been to.
You know, I know that we at Gruber Motors put those yellow vinyl stickers basically on Raphael's car a few weeks back. It's been fun to watch that, watch Raphael and the travels that he's doing. Raphael's in the process of driving around the world solo again here in 2023 as preparation for doing a 24 trip around the world with a group of people in EVs.
Mm-hmm. Which is similar to the first time. The first time he took the Roadster around the world, then they did another trip around with a Model S, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Raphael is one of those people that is passionate about the transition to sustainable energy in a variety of ways. In fact, he was even planting trees, and one of his missions was to go to Nova Scotia and see how the tree that he planted 10 years ago was doing there. And they were taking core samples to measure pollution in the rings, apparently.
Yes.
And then another tree in San Diego, which is where, again, they took core samples.
Yeah, since this picture, I believe he has traveled up to Seattle. I think he's in that area right now preparing for the journey across the sea over to Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be disembarking in China and then driving across southern Asia to get back to Europe.
Yeah, Raphael is definitely someone to keep an eye on, and his adventures are always entertaining. Tony Williams, who runs a shop there, QC Charge, which is where this interview took place, commented on Facebook and said, "We had a great time with Raphael Demestri and Kyle Connor at our shop." Yeah, it's always fun when these guys come to visit.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
Do you know if he's going to move the Roadster back by a sailboat again, like he did when he brought it over here?
I'm not certain, but I think that is his wish, is if he can find emission-free transport over to Asia, that would be his first choice.
Yeah, the latest that we had heard was that he has not been able to find emission-free transport yet. So he's thinking that at least here in 2023, he's going to end up having to put his car into a standard sea container and take a diesel boat, which is the typical method of transportation to get overseas.
Mm-hmm.
They're hoping for better in 2024, though.
So, Jesse, I've got another picture for you. It's called Caliper-1. We can throw that up. And what we began doing in earnest, although we've done it before, was instead of painting the brake calipers for the Tesla Roadster, we have begun to powder coat, and we're beginning to use that almost exclusively at this point. And the durability of a powder coating process is infinitely better than paint. Even brake fluid will take off some types of paint. But what we're also doing is, since in order to powder coat these, we have to completely disassemble them, we're completely rebuilding them with new bushings and rubber parts and, gaskets. And the results are dramatic. What we've done is we've taken a number of our calipers that were in inventory, the used ones, and those have been sent out to the powder coater, and we've got a number of them rebuilt now, ready to go into Roadsters at any moment's notice.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, are we also have the enhanced brakes that Gruber Motors produces as well, but these are more of the original brake calipers, correct?
Yeah, the calipers remain the same when we put in our performance brake package.
Okay.
And then the rotors and the shoes are changed to performance, and it fits perfectly. They dovetail nicely. And being the primary test driver at Gruber Motor Company, I can tell you without any doubt that the performance of our performance brakes is infinitely better than stock brakes. I remember, I don't know if I've told this story a few times, but when I first got my lightning green Roadster in 1364, I think it was, and I was driving it to work every day. It was my daily driver, and I remember I came up to 7th Street and Deer Valley Road here, and the arrow had gone away, and I needed to stop quickly, and I hit a slight bump, and got that that phenomenon that occurs when your ABS braking system senses a bump and the regen goes off, and it feels like your car is actually accelerating, which is not, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, that was touch and go. I mean, I learned very quickly that the brakes in my Tesla Roadster were nothing like my Dodge Viper ACR. And so you can, however, resolve that issue by getting our performance brake package. And it's on our website. It's under our e-store. And they can be installed by either yourself or your mechanic. You don't have to ship your car here to get this type of work done. And you will notice and feel the difference immediately. Speaking of suspension upgrades, we should probably throw up another picture, Jesse. It is the shocks picture.
Yeah, these shocks that we have are actually, we learned recently, these shocks were designed with in-tracks by Conrad Buck from Mars Orbiter. They partnered together to put together a custom shock design that would fit on a Tesla Roadster. And we did not know that when we first got these shocks, and it was we were remiss in not giving credit where credit is due there.
Yep, exactly. And of course, the benefit there is it wasn't the vendor deciding how to make these shocks. It was a industry expert. Conrad and Mars Orbiter is a well-known Roadster expert. And with some collaboration between him and Intrax is actually what resulted in this product. And we've put it in a number of cars now, and we're very pleased. We have one actually that's in shop right now that had the nitro shocks installed. What I noticed test driving that car was it literally drove like a dump truck. It was harsh. It was it was bone jarring. And as it turns out, the nitro shocks were they weren't exactly perfect for this Roadster, so they ended up putting spring extenders on this.
Oh, okay.
And those had collapsed. So that's why it was so stiff. We have currently pulled off all of those nitro shocks, and the customer has bought this set, and I'll probably be test driving that within the next couple of days or so. And as I told the customer, you know, shock problems and suspension problems kind of creep up on you so slowly that you don't realize what you're missing because it's such a gradual decline.
Sure.
And it's not until you put a good set of shocks in your car that you begin to realize what you've been living with all along. So I think this customer is going to be very happy with the end result.
One of the things that I think is most impressive about these shocks, for actually two things. First, they seem to have been based on motorcycle shocks, which are typically a much more rugged and a high-performance type of shock than what you'll see in cars. Racing bikes, especially the racing dirt bikes, need a level of shock absorption that is unlike anything that an automobile will ever need. Mm-hmm. And these have been designed more like those racing motorcycle shocks than they are car shocks. I really also like, though, how these are adjustable. The ability to have anything from a really soft ride, a nice, very smooth ride, to a fairly stiff ride is something that's, to me, is fairly unique in shock absorber technology.
Mm-hmm. And something to mention, too, is the original Roadster shock program was two different types. You had your performance shocks, and you had your standard shocks. The standard ones did not have...
Yeah, bring that back up.
They did not have this canister. And so what we're putting in is the equivalent of performance grade shocks on all of the Roadsters that we're upgrading at this point. Those of you that have been using us for rebuilt Roadster shocks, hang on, let me set this down, it's heavy.
Yeah.
We are continuing our Tesla Roadster Bill Steen rebuild program. And the Bilstein shocks, of course, are the stock shocks that are on the Roadsters. We have a local vendor here, been in the business for 40 years, that rebuilds Lamborghini shocks, has developed a bunch of custom tooling to rebuild shocks. And if you're interested in what shock rebuilding is about and how he tests them and how he puts them on a dyno even,
Wow.
there's a video out there on our YouTube channel, and it's called Roadster Shocks or something like that. But it's a very informative video because we actually took our social media team to his shop and went through the whole process of looking at the tooling that he uses, how he does it, what happens to shocks as they fail. It turns out that shocks fail not just because of mileage, they fail because of age. You literally have oil inside there that eventually decomposes.
Sure.
And you end up with, dampening that is missing or clogged valves. So there are a number of reasons to change your shocks, and it's not just mileage, it's also age. But yeah, for those of you interested, it's a good video to watch, and we will be continuing our shock rebuild program for anybody that wants the original Bilsteins made virtually new again.
On Instagram, Stylin13 says hi. So good
How
morning.
are you? Good morning.
Also on Instagram, AZA Matusta says, hi, what's up? We're really glad to have all the Instagram viewers join us today. I'll give full disclosure and say we did not know for sure if we were going to have Instagram because Richard is out on location doing video shoots, and Instagram right now does green screen because we have to use a phone to do our Instagram while everyone else is able to come through the main computer system. And Richard has the phone. It's Richard's phone. And so Jesse came in, as he usually does. He kind of rode to the rescue here. If for some reason Instagram suddenly turns off, it's going to be because Jesse's phone couldn't handle the drain on the battery.
Right. By the way, in case you're curious, where is Richard? What is he doing? He's the guy that catches all the questions and usually posts those. We have a 3-member team here in social media that helps during the podcast. He is out in eastern Arizona right now at the Queen Creek Expressway, and the Arizona Department of Transportation has actually shut down half of the freeway so that our crews could go inside the tunnel and replace an uninterruptible power system that powers the pumps when it rains. And Richard is there with our social media team to capture drone shots, video, and pictures of this process. So for those of you interested in our critical power portion of the business, that's going to be a video out on the GPS YouTube site soon.
I'm very excited to see what that video ends up looking like.
So Facebook, welcome Facebook. Tyler Sedlak, he says, an unrestored and unmodified Roadster will be an extremely rare. It's already rare, but imagine in another 15 years. You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, Tyler. We have a number of improvements and upgrades that we do to the Tesla Roadster. Some we do not recommend be done on collector cars. And what I mean by collector cars is the Signature 100 cars or the pedigreed cars, celebrity-owned. With those types of cars, they are better left unmolested and unrestored to a degree. The things that are accepted for replacement are things like tires.
Right.
Shocks, if you want to keep the original Bilsteins, then our refurbished and rebuilt Bilsteins is a better choice than this upgrade replacement shock. The 12-volt battery relocation, which allows you to change your own battery, $50 or less versus $500 to $600. We do not recommend that that is installed because we end up drilling holes in the trunk.
Right.
In the world of collecting, originality is very important, and there are a few things that are allowed to be modified, such as your engine, rings, pistons, that type of thing. But the engine block, it's got to be numbers matching. In the world of EVs, your power electronics module has to be rebuilt and overhauled because if you don't, you're going to burn up a PEM with the insulating material crashing or a transistor shorting. So those are acceptable performance improvements. And taking care of deferred maintenance, things like contactors and the electrolytic capacitors and the electronics in an PEM. So we usually advise customers what they should and should not be doing to their Roadster in order to maintain its collectability status.
You know, it really helps on collectability status, Pete, that you have been yourself a car collector in the past. We've talked on this podcast. We've talked on our Tuesday and Thursday, more general EV podcast about how you've had different Ferraris that you had put together, the Dodge Viper ACR, which was one that you had for a while that you were basically collecting. Even the T0 that you had, you knew that when you got it, it was one of 3 in the world, and it was going to be collectors. So I just want to throw out to everybody on the podcast, you definitely are an authority on car collecting and will know much of what a lot of other people are ignorant to. It's not that they're not that they don't mean well, it's that they would simply be ignorant.
Yeah, people are usually appreciative of the advice. You know, you take your 60s muscle cars, you take a Hemi Cuda, for example. If you can leave that 426 Hemi engine in that Cuda, there are much better crate engines available, up to 528 cubic inches with much better performance, but it's all about originality. And as soon as you put one of those upgrades in the car, it's now a clone car. It's no longer a collectible car. I mean, in the world of that type of car collecting, they go as far as recreating the paint drips on the torsion bar underneath the car, just like they did back in the day when they used rattle can black at the production facilities. And if you're taking your car to have it measured in terms of its collectability or, at car shows, these are the types of things that the judges are looking for. Originality, numbers matching transmission, numbers matching engine block, chassis, all of that.
Well, and when it comes to keeping track and storing and taking care of your collectible car, I am thrilled to know that our construction on our car storage facility is getting started this week.
Yeah, we both are. For those of you unaware, the building that went through the fire almost 2 years ago now,
I know,
is finally in earnest beginning construction, and it is going to be the world's first dedicated electric vehicle exotic car storage facility. And it's going to be state-of-the-art. We're going to have not only all of the monitoring functions from fire to security, 24/7 security, temperature controlled, but it is going to be state-of-the-art in that every car will have an OVMS unit. And we're talking about Roadsters, by the way. It'll be carefully monitored by staff with flat screens, and the owners get the same information sent to their cell phones. And specializing in electric vehicles and, of course, maintained properly, charged properly. There will be no bricked Roadsters in our EV storage facility ever.
Thank goodness.
Real quick, Pete, question on the value of Roadsters for that Facebook question. Imagine how they'll be in 15 years, he said.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction what 15 years will do, but if you look at the trajectory so far, since 2021 or so, we've more than doubled in value. Now, there's been a temporary setback currently. There's craziness going on in Eastern Europe and inflation woes. And I understand that we may have a president that may get elected but be in jail. Well, anyway, all this crazy stuff that's going on right now is putting a damper, I think, on people that are willing or affecting their willingness to use disposable income for vehicles like this. However, for the most part, Tesla Roadsters are holding around $100,000 valuation at this point, and that's non-pedigreed.
Yes.
The pedigreed Roadsters, look on our free Roadster matchmaking site. Another one just sold, and if it's got a low VIN, low mileage, some sort of a pedigree, those are off the chart currently based on what the normal Roadsters are selling for. That Roadster that sold for $66K should not be used for comp value ever. That was a special case, and it should have been sold as such.
Yeah, it's an outlier, and anybody in the insurance industry who is reputable is going to see that was an outlier type of case. In 15 years, man, that's hard to tell.
Well, we have investors and collectors that are beginning to tuck these cars away. And to give you an example, by the end of this month, our 3 Chinese Roadsters will be arriving here at the Gruber Motor Company facility. The highest bid that we've had on those so far is $2 million for 3 Roadsters. So you kind of get an idea what a highly pedigreed Roadster, what kind of interest there is for those kinds of cars. The highest Roadster that we had that sold about a year and a half ago, actually, was $295,000 for a low-VIN, low-mileage Roadster. And that was a year and a half ago. All right, looks like Instagram. We've got a question. Pavlo Lavrenko says, hello, it's hard to find client which take care of cars, safety brakes, and the shock absorbers in UK. They don't change before they fail. And in Ukraine, people try to change before the oil goes out. And sorry for the English. All right, I think we're getting what you're saying. Yeah, not all owners take care of their vehicles properly. That's for sure. And that's one of the reasons we have this podcast is we are a voice for the community. And a lot of information like this is exchanged in these podcasts, both from our audience and from ourselves doing research on how to take care of these cars.
By all means. On Instagram, Alim Noor 8 says, I have a problem in my car according to the low charge. So what is the reason?
Well, we need a bit more information. Is it a Roadster? Is it just a low charge and it charges to the same level every single time? Is it a rapidly declining charge, which indicates a resistive cell? And what is that state of charge that you're able to charge it to? Those are going to be important questions for us to weigh in.
Yeah, because the answers to those questions could end up leading us to some very different recommendations, depending on what those answers are. Now, assuming that Alim's request or problem here is that you have a declining charge, what would that be?
Well, if it's a declining charge, it's a resistive cell, and that car needs to get to our service center quickly rather than later, because there isn't anything that you can do, including pulling a service plug, that's going to prevent the eventual damage to a brick. A brick, again, a collection of 69 cells connected in parallel. A resistive cell is going to drain those 68 other cells to a point below 2 volts, and if it spends any time there, it can create some damage to those other cells with a chemical process, a deteriorating chemical process. So time is not on your side. Usually, we're able to recover cars in that condition within the first 2 to 3 months without any issues. So that's an important question is what type of decline are you seeing? If it's a gradual decline if it's a Roadster, and you're used to charging at 158 miles, and this year it's 157, 156, that's quite normal. You're going to get some of that decline. But anything rapid is definitely cause for concern.
Yeah, I think the most rapid decline that we had seen was the Roadster that came from Florida now almost 2 months ago. The customer called, said, here's what's going on. On Saturday, I could charge to 150. On Sunday, I could charge to 130. Today, it's Monday, I'm charging to 112. And so we had her immediately get her Roadster on transport and over to us. By the time she got the transport 3 days later, it was charging to 30 miles. Yeah. And
by the time it got here, it was completely dead.
Yeah, it was completely dead. And we had to, wheels were locked. It was a brick battery.
Now, the interesting thing about that is I test drove that car up until a couple of days ago, and I was floored when I saw a standard charge, that's the 80% charge, at 183 miles range at my house.
That is absolutely phenomenal because the Tesla Roadster, when it was first put out into the marketplace, announced that their standard range was going to be 185 miles. And that's in 2008 to 2011.
Yeah.
So if you're still holding 183 miles, that means that the overall health of the battery was fantastic. We just had one bad cell.
And you just heard Mark's story about what the condition of the car was when it arrived here and how quickly it declined, which is, and this is not uncommon, it was one cell out of 631 that was causing this problem. And once we isolated and neutralized that cell, it's now charging to 183 every single time reliably. So these Roadsters do come back to life.
Yeah, and it's, to me, this is just one of the unusual things about electric vehicles. We have basically a AA battery can take down a $100,000 car.
Right. So the other thing that we have been doing on this Tesla Roadster owners site on Facebook is we've been tracking the service centers, Tesla service centers, that are able and willing to take Tesla Roadsters. And we keep on adding to that list. If you're curious, you can go to that Facebook site. If you're not a member, apply, and we will let you join. And the service center list keeps on growing. It's based on feedback from our customers at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We do have Tesla, though, that gave us a commitment and said as soon as we get rid of the ambiguity which ones are and aren't, we're going to give you that list to publish, and we'll be able to give you the formal and official Tesla version list, which service centers you can take your car to. Now, the reason that's important is you may be used to driving 15 miles down the road to take your Roadster there, and only to find when you get there, they can't take your Roadster anymore. So in this case, you'll be pre-warned and you'll be informed as to which service centers you can take it to. It may be a distance from your house, but there are still Roadster service centers that are accepting Roadsters. And as they were telling us, they are flying technicians back to corporate to get Roadster training. So the commitment to continue to service them continues. And the bottom line is, if you're near a service center that doesn't have a strong Roadster tech, what's the point in taking it there anyway? So you'll want to focus on the ones that do have staff and have expertise.
Oh, by all means, there are, we think, somewhere around 1,900 cars worldwide that are on the road, that are Roadsters. And here in the United States, we think that number is somewhere around, what do you think, 1,200 or so?
Not sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
1,300 cars that are on the road still here in the United States. When you think about it, that's a really small number.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at what was it, 330,000 Model Ys delivered and put onto the road in the first quarter of 2023, and we're talking we're talking 1,300, not 330,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a lot of logical sense for Tesla to actually extend their commitment by saying we're going to consolidate our Roadster techs so that we make sure that they can keep the knowledge and we don't have everything spread out so wide that somebody's working on a Roadster once every 6 months and they've forgotten what they worked on by the time they get the next Roadster.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, too, the question you asked me earlier. With our census program on our website, it's easy for us to extract or filter out just the U.S. Roadsters, so we can answer that question with software.
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea because our census program has somewhere around 2,000 Roadsters registered, and out of about the known universe of 24 to 2,500 that were made,
Mm-hmm.
having over 2,000 registered puts us up in the area of 80 to 90% of the worldwide Roadsters are ones that we know about and we have listed on our site.
Counted for, yeah. Jesse, I've got another image, if you can pop it up. It's in the images folder, and it's called the smoked headlights folder. Got a Roadster here that we wanted to show you guys. And inside that folder, if you can go to Final Edit, there are a smaller group of pictures there. So images, smoked headlights, and Final Edit. And what I'm going to show you here is a sterling silver Tesla Roadster that we did a bit of body work on. And it had peeling headlights, which is not uncommon with Tesla Roadsters. And the customer challenged us. He said, well, now that you've fixed my Roadster, use your best judgment and put the kind of improvements and enhancements on this car as if you own the car. Well, Victor loved that part because he loves Tesla Roadsters. So the first thing he did was, of course, they fixed the peeling headlights, resurfaced those, put a new clear coat, UV resistant, by the way, on, and then decided, let's try a smoked PPF and see what it looks like and how much light comes through. And it was stunning, absolutely stunning. If you can go to the next image there, Jesse, It's one of the ones of the headlight, a close-up. There we go. And, even this picture doesn't do it justice. When you get up to this car and you see that, and it's just glistening, and then you turn on the headlights and you realize there's all kinds of light coming through because we upgraded to LEDs.
Of course.
Plenty of brightness. Again, that was a real nice touch. Then he ended up going with the performance brake package, which is another image there, Jesse. It's the one with the wheel image. And to take it a step even further, we created those wheel hubs with the red Tesla T in this case. And we can do that in either silver or, any color that you can dream up. But we wanted to match the red calipers. And then, of course, brand new lug nuts to get rid of those rusted, compromised lug nuts with the lug nut key, which is dangerous to leave on your car. And the wheels got powder coated. They were curb rash. They were silver. And we went with a black gloss powder coat. And I'm telling you, this customer saw some of these pictures, and he is very anxious to get his car back and start driving it again.
I think about when a customer is willing to do that. My daughter has tattoos. Now, I'm not a big tattoo fan myself. She is. God love her. I'm. What she did with the tattoo artist was I went to go get a shoulder tattoo and said, I think I want something kind of galaxy-ish.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you just use my arm as a canvas and you do what you want?
Right.
The piece of art that she now wears on her arm is probably the most incredible tattoo I've ever seen. And it has helped to establish a reputation and career for this tattoo artist. This is the same thing here with this Roadster.
Right.
They were for somebody to come to us. We're grateful that they're willing to do that, right. And hopefully they enjoy their car as much as we have enjoyed upgrading it for them.
And what we've been doing with these stellar examples is putting them in our gallery list on our website so that future customers can look and get ideas what could be done with their Roadster.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. We've got a Brian Silver question here. Do you anticipate retrofitting gold gas thrusters on vintage Roadsters?
Just kidding, he says.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that is a pretty good joke, actually.
Yeah, retrofitting cold gas thrusters. Sure. The Roadster 2.0, what are they talking about? Some sort of extra SpaceX type of thruster? Yeah, okay. I don't think I want to sit in a car that goes 0 to 60 in 1.1 seconds anyway.
Yeah, that would be an experience. I'm not going to bow out. I think I'll try it, but what do you think, Jesse?
We just lost Instagram. I got to grab the phone.
Okay, all right. So you're going to see Jesse's head for a second here, or if you want to just leave it, I think we're wrapping anyway, Jesse. Yeah. We're at an hour and 17 minutes. Again, we appreciate the Roadster owners joining us. We welcome the questions. We are just pleased that you guys are finding some value in this, and we're committed to continuing this. Tomorrow we have our... Go ahead, Jesse.
One more.
A question? All right.
Coming in from Anthony. Hold on.
Normally, these would be popping up on the screen, but Richard's not here, and Jesse is back there multitasking, and he probably needs an extra set of arms. Facebook, Anthony Venditti, and he's saying, I got a question about Tesla repairs. Why do you guys have to make your own testing procedures? Doesn't Tesla have repair manuals?
Great question.
Yeah. For the later models, of course, there's an enormous amount of information available. We even subscribe to a software package called Toolbox that gives shops like ours the ability to replicate fundamentally what they're doing at the Tesla service centers.
Mm-hmm.
The Tesla Roadster is a bit of a different car in a number of ways. Most of the original Tesla people that knew anything about Roadster are long gone. They were either Teslanaires, they bought stock options, and they are now worth $200-300 million, and they don't need to go to work anymore. or they were poached by the other EV manufacturers that recognize that Tesla has an enormous amount of intellectual property buried in the heads and minds of these employees. And they purchased them, literally. You know, you throw double salary at someone, it's going to be tough to keep them on the farm. And then finally, because of the near misses with bankruptcy, not a lot of documentation survived or was preserved because some of the people didn't think that the company was going to be around. And there were protocols that weren't being followed as the company shrunk and grew and shrunk and grew. And, you know, so it's very difficult to work on Tesla Roadsters. And one of the gifts that we have since we've been in the electronics business for 40 years, doing reverse engineering in the critical power world, we're actually able to recreate much of this lost data, procedures, schematics, and that's what makes us so potent and powerful in the Tesla Roadster world. And we also oftentimes share things with Tesla. So it's a two-way street. That's the fundamental reason why we have to recreate much of the tools for the Tesla Roadster.
You know, I'm speculating here, but it's a car company who said, we're going to produce a car that nobody else has produced, and we're going to see whether or not the marketplace will accept a car that is a for-real car, because the EV cars that had gone before were, you know, Toyota Prius or like the Nissan Leaf with a 70-mile range. There's, in that logic that Tesla has openly admitted to in the past, the seeds of, hey, if this works, great, but if it doesn't work, well, maybe we're not going to put a lot of extra effort into documenting what didn't work in the first place.
Right.
And then you add to that the fact that they've only got a 3-year lifespan of manufacturing and about 2,400 cars. Yeah, they were learning how to build cars themselves.
You know, we've gone through this ourselves here. Small companies typically try to put protocols in place for backups and maintaining documentation. Much of this type of data resided on C drives in workstations, and as someone left, that information eventually got wiped out, or scrubbed. So, you know, there are a number of reasons. Someday there will be a book written about this whole Tesla evolution, and it's going to be great reading, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will. So we have one more here. It looks like two more. Facebook, Anthony Venditti says, thank you. Love listening to your shows and video clips.
Thank you.
And then To Be Announced says, thanks, guys. He had sent us an email. He says, hopefully you've gotten the email and we can speak about it tomorrow.
We'll certainly check, yeah. And tomorrow, by the way, is our EV podcast, which is at 10 Mountain Standard Time or Pacific Standard Time currently. So feel free to join us, and we'll get into broader subjects there regarding the EV marketplace, the other companies. And are we going to talk a bit more about Lucid tomorrow?
Oh, I think we probably will.
Okay.
We probably will. I took some time yesterday and kind of finished out the analysis of the Lucid finances from Q2, and we'll probably be talking a little bit more about that as well.
Well, again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow, hopefully. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Take care.